This happened just a few weeks ago. I had just moved to this small town to find peace after my breakup. I'm not used to being alone, but I thought settling in a quiet place would help me heal. My new house was a modest, old fixer-upper at the end of a dead-end street. It felt isolated, but I figured it would get better. The first night, I was exhausted from unpacking. I went to bed early. Around 3 a.m., I woke to soft thuds against my window. My first thought was branches from the oak tree outside. I tried to ignore it and pulled the covers over my head. But the sound didn't stop. It kept going, a rhythmic tapping that made my skin crawl. I tried to convince myself I was imagining it. The second night, it happened again. I stirred awake, this time to whispers faint, echoing sounds that seemed to come from the walls. My heart raced. I glanced out the window, but all I could see was darkness. Was I just being paranoid? I was overwhelmed and tired, and the noises didn't help. My neighbor, Mr. Johnson, sat on his porch, staring into my yard. He didn't say a word, just watched me like he was waiting for something. It felt so uncomfortable, like he knew something I didn't. I thought about saying hi, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. Days went by, and things escalated. I started hearing laughter, a childless laughter. It floated around when I was washing dishes or sitting in my living room. There were no kids around. I thought maybe I was losing my mind from lack of sleep. But one night, the laughter came right after the thudding, and my heart raced even more. Was it only me, or was something wrong with this place? I considered going to Mr. Johnson to ask if he heard the noises too, but I wasn't sure I should. What if he thought I was crazy? The thought made me feel cold all over. I couldn't shake off the dread. Then one night, against my better judgment, I felt drawn to the window. I wanted to see what was outside. I opened the curtains slowly. My heart pounded. I don't remember exactly what I saw, but it felt wrong, like something was not right. I was terrified, but I couldn't look away. Why was I hearing laughter? And why did Mr. Johnson keep staring? I thought maybe I was just being paranoid. But that question lingered, what was really happening outside my window? Then I heard it again, louder this time, a voice calling my name. I froze. I turned slowly, but I was utterly alone. I felt a chill run down my spine. I still can't explain it. The sound lingered, echoing in my mind long after I turned off the light and tried to sleep. What was out there? The next day, I was on edge. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me. I decided I needed answers. I mustered what little courage I had and walked over to Mr. Johnson's house. The sun was setting, casting a soft glow over the neighborhood. His porch creaked as I approached. "Mr. Johnson?" I called out hesitantly, my voice barely above a whisper. He turned slowly, eyes narrowing as if weighing me with scrutiny. "What is it?" he replied, his tone flat. I was wondering. I started, my palms sweating. "Have you heard any strange noises at night? Like thudding or laughter?" His expression didn't change. "You hear things in old houses," he said, shrugging as if it were a common occurrence. "Nothing to worry about." "Right," but I pressed, feeling the dread crawl up my spine. "What about kids? No one lives around here, right?" He shifted in his seat. "Kids can be sneaky, you know. They get into all sorts of trouble." His eyes flickered to the ground, as if hiding something. I felt a knot in my stomach. I wanted to pry more, but I didn't know how. The conversation felt heavy, like I was treading on thin ice. So I offered a weak smile and turned back toward my house, the feeling of his gaze still burning into my back. That night, I tried to distract myself by watching TV, but the sounds returned. Thuds, whispers, and then the laughter, always chilling, always too close. I couldn't ignore it this time. I kept glancing outside, half hoping to see a child playing, half terrified of what I might find. The thuds grew louder, thumping against the window as if whatever was outside wanted to get in. My hands trembled as I gripped the couch. Then I heard the voice calling again, clearer this time. It sounded like a young girl. "Help me." A wave of panic rushed through me. I shot up, heart racing. I had to see outside again. I approached the window, almost as if something was pulling me toward it. The shadows outside deepened, and I could make out figures standing near the trees, small shapes, almost blending into the darkness. That's when I saw it. One shape stepped forward, illuminated momentarily by the glow of the streetlight. A little girl, dressed in a faded dress, with wild, tangled hair. Her mouth moved, but no sound came out. The sight sent a jolt of terror through me. Then she pointed directly at my window. I stumbled back, breathless, and tried to collect my thoughts. Was it real? My mind raced as I tried to wrap it around the possibility. I was about to turn and run when I heard another noise, a low growl coming from behind me. Something was in the house. I turned slowly, dread pooling in my stomach. The air felt thick, and I could hardly breathe. I didn't know what to expect next, but whatever it was, I wasn't going to find peace here. I needed to get out before it did. I stumbled into the hallway, my heart pounding. I could hear the growl again, low and guttural. Fear gripped me. I wanted to hide, but I pushed myself forward. I had to see what was in my house. I reached the living room and glanced around. Nothing seemed out of place, yet the darkness felt alive. The shadows clung to the corners, pushing in, making me feel small. I grabbed a lamp, its base sturdy and familiar. If anything came at me, I'd be ready. "Hello?" I called out, my voice shaking. There was no answer, just the echo of my own voice, lost in the silence. I knew it was probably just my imagination, but the weight of dread pressed on my chest, making it hard to breathe. As I turned to look down the narrow hallway leading to the bedrooms, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was watching me. Every creak of the floorboards sounded amplified in the stillness. I took a tentative step forward when I noticed a flicker of movement out of the corner of my eye. I spun around, my heart in my throat. In the corner of the living room, a tall figure loomed. My breath caught as I squinted into the dark. The shapes seemed to shift, coalescing into something recognizable. It was a child, standing there silently, with a hand raised as though beckoning me closer. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice trembling. "What do you want?" The child didn't respond. Instead, she simply pointed again toward the window, her fingers steady and urgent. I felt a surge of fear course through me, but curiosity clung to my thoughts. I stepped closer, eyeing the window as if it held the answers I desperately sought. That's when I heard it, a whisper, melodious but haunting. "Help us, please." The words wrapped around my mind, spinning it into confusion. "Help who?" I shouted, frustration spilling out. "What's going on?" The child glanced back over her shoulder, as if expecting someone. Then she took a step closer to me. "They need help. We're trapped," she whispered, her voice growing fainter. Before I could process what she meant, the air turned icy. The low growl erupted again, this time closer. I whirled around, heart racing as panic surged through me. Whatever was behind me, it was moving. I turned back to the child, but she was gone. Only shadows remained, fading into the darkness. I was alone, panicking as I felt the presence creeping toward me. Then my phone buzzed on the coffee table, breaking the stillness. I grabbed it, hands shaking. A message popped up from a number I didn't recognize. "Get out. You're in danger." My stomach plummeted. I didn't need to think twice. I ran for the door, every instinct screaming that I had to leave. I flung it open and dashed outside, the chill night air hitting me like a wall. But there, under the streetlight, stood the little girl again, watching me with wide, pleading eyes. I hesitated, fear mixing with concern. What was really going on? In that moment, I knew I couldn't just run away. Not now. I stepped toward the girl, my pulse still hammering. "What do you mean you're trapped?" I asked, lowering my voice, trying not to frighten her. She looked so fragile, standing there with moonlight casting her in silver. "The man," she whispered, eyeing the house behind me nervously. "He watches. He doesn't let us go." I glanced back at my home, feeling an overwhelming urge to protect this child I had just met. Who is he? Her eyes widened. He is dangerous. You need to listen. Then I heard it again, the growl, louder and closer, sending chills racing through my body. My instincts screamed at me to flee, but I couldn't abandon her. What do you want me to do? I pressed, feeling the weight of the moment. Bring the light, she said, looking down. We have to shine it on him. Light? What kind of light? I was grasping for answers, frustration bubbling beneath my fear. She turned and pointed toward the bushes that lined my yard. I squinted into the darkness, trying to see what she was indicating, but only shadows greeted me. Suddenly, another flash of movement caught my eye just beyond the bushes. Something was moving. I took a step back, heart racing. Could it be him? Something dark and hulking, blending with the night? Please, the girl pleaded, her voice trembling. I couldn't let her down. Steeling myself, I grabbed the flashlight from my pocket, its beam a small comfort against the oppressive dark. We need to find him, I asked, trying to sound braver than I felt. Not him. It. The light will help. She shifted from foot to foot, her own fear palpable. With trembling hands, I shone the flashlight toward the bushes. The beam cut through the darkness but revealed nothing. I took a few hesitant steps forward, the girl close behind. Each click of my footsteps felt like a drum in the stillness. The growl erupted again, this time, right behind me. I gasped and spun around, shining the light into the blackness that loomed. But there was nothing. Just emptiness. Don't let him get you, the girl cried, her wide eyes locking onto mine. Shine the light. I turned back toward the bushes, my stomach knotting tighter. Show yourself, I shouted into the dark, feeling foolish yet desperate. My heart raced as I felt the air close in around me. That's when I saw it. A flash of movement darted deeper into the shadows, a shape darting away. Instinct took over. I ran after it, the light beam flickering like a heartbeat. The girl was yelling something, but I couldn't focus on her words. I needed to know what was out there. The flashlight slipped in my grasp, catching reflections of something crawling in the underbrush, slender, unnatural, and oh so familiar. The moment felt suspended, and as I peered closer, everything changed. The streetlight flickered wildly, and suddenly, all I could feel was darkness closing in, suffocating. Then everything went dark. I gasped, the abrupt silence cutting deep. It felt like a void where all sound had disappeared. I blinked, trying to adjust, but the darkness felt tangible, wrapping around me. My heart hammered in my chest, and I strained to remember where I was. The flashlight slipped from my fingers and hit the grass, flickering to life for an instant before going out. Panic surged through me. I fumbled for it, feeling disoriented. The girl was gone, and dread coiled in my stomach. I had to find her. I reached for my phone, hoping to use its light. The screen glowed dimly as I tapped it awake. The small circle of light was like a lifeline, but it barely touched the edges of the darkness around me. I called out, "Hey! Where are you?" My voice echoed, swallowed by the void. My breath quickened, and I could hear that low growl again, more powerful and much closer. Each sound stirred an instinct to run, but I couldn't leave without the girl. "Stay close," I shouted, hoping she was still nearby. My feet pressed into the ground, a futile attempt to anchor myself in this thick, smothering darkness. I took a few tentative steps, squinting into the inky blackness. "Please," I murmured, half hoping the girl would appear in the light of my phone, half fearing what might emerge instead. As I swept the light around, shadows danced in twisted shapes. The growl came again, echoing through the night, and I froze. This time, it sounded like it was coming from the house itself. My instincts kicked in, pulling me toward my home. I stepped nearer, still cautious. The door was ajar, swinging slightly with a creak that chilled me to the bone. I clutched the phone tighter and pressed inside. As I crossed the threshold, the temperature dropped. The familiar smell of my own home felt foreign, tainted by unease. "Hello?" I called, voice trembling. The darkness wrapped tighter around me, and my heart thundered. I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting the girl to come scuttling in behind me, but I was alone. Just the echo of my voice lingered. I moved toward the living room, the faint glow from my phone revealing familiar furniture now cast in eerie shadows. Then I saw a movement by the window. My blood ran cold. I stepped closer, heart racing. Shadows loomed and flickered beneath the curtain, as if something was lurking just out of reach. My mind raced, trying to rationalize what I was seeing. Could it just be a trick of the light? But the growl came again, I was sure of it. A deep, guttural sound that vibrated through the floor, filling me with dread. Holding the phone high, I pushed the curtain aside. What I saw made my blood run cold. Out in the yard, something was watching me, its eyes glinting in the dim light. I barely had time to register the terror before it darted back into the shadows, leaving only confusion and fear behind. And then, the growling stopped. Standing frozen, I felt my phone slip from my fingers and crash onto the floor, the light extinguished. A new sound came, softer now but unmistakably there, a voice, whispering my name. Help, it was the girl. I turned, voice caught in my throat. Where are you? I whispered, trying to sound brave, but my words trembled. The whisper was close enough that I felt I should be able to reach her, but the darkness pressed in tighter. Help, came the voice again, more urgent this time. Without the light from my phone, I felt lost, a ship adrift in dark waters. I fought panic bubbling up within me. I needed to keep calm, to think. I patted the floor where my flashlight had fallen, feeling for it in the pitch black. My fingers brushed against something cool and metallic. I grabbed it, relief washing over me as the flashlight flickered back to life, the beam cutting through the darkness. Where are you? I tried again, shining the light around. It danced across the walls, casting jittery shapes. The growling had returned lower, more threatening. I held my breath, heart racing as I pointed the light toward the sound. Nothing. Just shadow. As the beam swept across the living room, I spotted a shadow moving behind the sofa. I couldn't tell if it was just my imagination or if something lurked there. Please, say something, I urged, shifting closer, but whatever was there seemed to melt into the blackness. The air felt thick, suffocating. Something brushed against my leg, and I jumped back, pulse quickening. Is that you? I shouted, knowing full well it wasn't the girl. The growling morphed into a low snicker, chilling me further. Help! It was more of a cry now, a demand rather than a plea. Confusion and fear gripped me. What happened to the frightened girl who had whispered before? I moved toward the kitchen, hoping the open space might soothe my nerves. I turned back to the direction of the voice. I'm coming! I called, but doubt clawed at me. What if she wasn't alone anymore? The shadows shifted again, and then I felt the floorboards creak behind me. I turned sharply, the beam of the flashlight catching a glimpse of what I hoped was just my imagination. Instead, I found a figure standing too still. The girl's silhouette shifted into something more grotesque. I could see the outline of her face, but her features were twisted. Help me, she rasped, but the voice wasn't hers. The growl rumbled beneath her words, a blend of hunger and mockery. In that moment, the flashlight flickered again as if sensing the horror before me. I felt a rush of adrenaline, fight or flight taking over. Instinctively, I backed away just as the growling erupted again, echoing in the corners like a horrid symphony. Run! I found myself yelling, though part of me didn't want to leave this creature. I stumbled, hitting the wall, desperate to get away before it lunged. Just then, a loud crash shattered the silence, and the lights in the house flickered ominously. Help! It came again, the voice now pleading, but something inside me knew it wasn't a plea for help. With determination, I moved toward the front door, breathless. I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd soon wish I hadn't stepped outside. But the noise was growing, and I needed to escape. I flung the door wide open, unprepared for what lay beyond. What I found would change everything. I sprinted out the door, the chaos behind me spilling into the night. The cold air hit my face like a splash of icy water, and the shock grounded me for just a moment. I was outside, but I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever I had just encountered was still there, lingering in the shadows of that house. The porch creaked beneath my feet as I glanced back. The door swung shut, almost as if it had a mind of its own. The darkness enveloped the house, the growling fading into an eerie silence. What now? The street was empty, dimly lit by flickering streetlights that barely pushed back the shadows. I took a few tentative steps away from the house, eyes darting around. I needed to find help, but every instinct told me to stay close to the safety of the light. As I ventured further down the street, an unsettling sound reached my ears, a soft whimpering, almost like a wounded animal. It wasn't coming from the house but rather from a nearby alley. My gut twisted. Part of me yelled to stay away, but another part, a foolish, curious part, urged me to investigate. I inched closer, the beam of my flashlight trembling as I pointed it toward the alley. The light flickered, casting long shadows that danced against the brick walls. I took a breath, trying to steady my hands. As I rounded the corner, I pointed the flashlight into the darkness. There, against the damp concrete, knelt a figure wrapped in a ragged blanket. The girl. Her hair was tangled and matted with dirt. I felt a jolt of relief wash over me, but it quickly morphed into caution as I noticed the way she trembled like a leaf caught in a storm. "Are you okay?" I asked, my voice small and shaky. She raised her head, eyes wide and glistening. But the moment I saw her face, the chill crept back. Her features were the same, but there was something unsettling in her gaze, a wildness that made me instinctively step back. "Help me," she whispered again, but now it felt loaded with something sinister, something that sent a shiver down my spine. Before I could respond, the air suddenly grew colder, heavier. Shadows behind her shifted, and I glanced over my shoulder. That's when I saw it. A dark mass slithering along the wall, creeping toward us. My heart raced as I realized this was no ordinary shadow. "Get away from her!" I yelled, instinctively putting myself between the girl and the encroaching darkness. In what felt like an instant, the figure lunged forward. An twisted form erupted from the shadows, its mouth twisted in a grotesque smile, teeth sharp and dripping with malice. "We can play together, don't you want to?" it crooned, echoing with a voice that felt both seductive and horrifying. I could only stand frozen, horror crashing over me in waves. There was no time to think, no time to even scream. I needed to act. "Back off!" I shouted, my voice louder, more desperate now. But the words felt feeble. The mass drew closer, surging with an otherworldly hunger. Then everything went dark. I gasped as the blackness swallowed me whole, the world fading into a suffocating void. I flailed my arms, desperate for contact, anything to anchor me back to reality. Then I felt a sharp coldness wrapping around my throat, pulling me downward. Instinct kicked in. I forced myself to take a deep breath, and suddenly, like flipping a switch, I was thrust back into the alley, the girl's figure still huddled beneath the blanket. But the darkness had shifted, the creature was gone. I blinked, eyes scanning the alley, confusion reigning. "Where did it go?" I muttered, every nerve still on edge. The girl remained quiet, staring blankly. I took a step closer, heart pounding in my chest. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head slowly, but her eyes darted to the shadows lining the alley. "It'll be back," she whispered, her voice trembling. Panic flooded me again. How did she know? I turned to survey the alleyway. It was still and silent except for the echo of our breaths. "We need to," I began, but the words caught in my throat as something moved. A flicker of movement in the corner of my eye drew my attention. Then it happened all at once. From the darkness, what looked like a single more substantial shadow twisted, forming into a shape. It rose slightly off the ground, resembling a hunched figure cloaked in shadows. My gut twisted. "Run!" I shouted, grabbing the girl's hand. She flinched but then followed me as we dashed back toward the street. The echo of our footsteps bounced off the walls, but I could still hear the creature behind us, its unnatural laughter ringing in my ears like a twisted lullaby. We burst into the street, and I stumbled, nearly losing my grip on her hand. I turned to look back, praying it hadn't followed. The figure stopped at the mouth of the alley, watching us with its hungry gaze. "Where do we go?" the girl asked, panic evident in her voice now. My mind raced. I spotted the street lights flickering but gave no comfort against the night. "We need shelter," I replied, scanning for options. My thoughts went to my home, but the memory of the chaos there loomed, still fresh and terrifying. "Over here." I pointed to a diner across the street. It was still open, thankfully. Without hesitation, we sprinted toward it. I pushed the door open, dragging the girl inside. The bell above jingled in protest as I slammed it shut, my back pressed against the wood, breathing heavily. Inside, the air was warm, filled with the smell of coffee and greasy fries. A few patrons glanced our way, their faces a mix of curiosity and concern. "Are you okay?" the waitress asked, looking at us with worried eyes. I took a moment, trying to gather my thoughts. But all I could hear was the phantom echo of the creature's laughter, and a sense of dread knotted in my stomach. What if the danger didn't end here? Something followed us, I stammered, feeling the words spilling out. Something not human. The waitress frowned, glancing towards the door. "What do you mean?" Before I could explain, the lights flickered violently, plunging the diner momentarily into darkness. I felt a cold draft rush past me, a whisper of fear haunting the edges of my mind. That's when I saw it, a shape outside the window, lurking just beyond the glass, watching us with that same twisted smile. I stumbled backward, my heart pounding harder. The figure outside was framed by the dim light of the diner. It wasn't just lurking, it was scratching at the glass with long, thin fingers, its smile wider as if it enjoyed our fear. I felt the breath leave my lungs. "Get away from the window!" I shouted, trying to contain my rising panic. The waitress instinctively turned to move towards the door, but I grabbed her arm. "No! It's out there!" I gestured frantically, but she looked more confused than scared, an empty expression painting her face. The other patrons murmured among themselves, casting glances at the window and back at me. I felt exposed, like they could see the dread coiling around me. I shifted my gaze and saw the girl trembling, her eyes locked on the figure outside. "What does it want?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "I don't know," I replied, my own voice shaking. "But we can't stay here." The lights flickered again, and the laughter echoed in my mind. "It's coming," I thought. I had to act. "We have to find another way out." I looked around, desperate. "Is there a back exit?" I asked the waitress. She blinked at me, lost in a daze. "The back?" I pressed, more urgently. Before she could answer, a loud bang shook the diner, and the figure at the window slammed its hands against the glass, cracking the surface. Gasps erupted around me. "Run!" I yelled again, this time grabbing the girl's hand. I pushed through the narrow aisles, dodging tables. The sound of shattering glass filled the air. The patrons stood frozen, eyes wide, transfixed by the chaos erupting around us. We reached the kitchen door, and I yanked it open hard enough to send it swinging against the wall. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Inside, the air was humid and the smell of grease overwhelming. "Quick!" I urged, pulling the girl through the threshold. We paused for a moment, listening. The sounds of the diner were muted here. I scanned the room, looking for an open door. There were ovens and sinks covered in grime, but no clear escape. "Where do we go?" "It'll find us," the girl whimpered, fear etched across her small face. Just stay close to me." But I could feel my own resolve wavering. I'd never faced anything like this. Just then, a shuddering noise reverberated through the walls. It was close, a sign the creature was no longer outside. I heard a muffled voice from the front of the diner. It was the waitress, chanting something incoherent, almost as if she was entranced. "What's happening?" I began to climb through the kitchen, knowing we couldn't stay. Before I could even reach my next step, another explosion of glass shattered the diner's front, and the haunting laughter grew louder. The girl clutched my hand tighter. Then everything went cold. The lights went out completely, and I felt a presence rush in, spilling shadows through the room. I turned to run, but then I noticed something strange, something gleaming, reflecting a sliver of light on the ground. It was a small silver pendant, pulsing softly, left behind. I reached out to pick it up, but as my fingers brushed against it, the shadows intensified. That's when I began to understand. I might not be able to keep running forever. This was only the beginning. In that moment, I felt an urgency that surged deeper than fear. It was survival. I knew I couldn't stay in the diner any longer. I hastily tossed the pendant back down, unwilling to let it hypnotize me any further. The girl tugged at my hand, urging me onward as the shadows thickened around us. We emerged through the back door and stumbled outside into a narrow alleyway flanked by bricks and shadows. The night air was cooler, but my heart raced. "Come on, we need to get away from that thing," I whispered, hoping my determination would shield her from whatever darkness pursued us. Where do we go?" she stuttered, fear evident in her voice. We pressed against the damp wall, hoping for an idea, any idea. "Towards the park," I finally decided aloud. There were streetlights there, and grass and open space, a place where shadows wouldn't be able to cling as tightly. "Keep close," I urged, watching her nod, her wide eyes shining with a mix of terrified trust and cold dread. As we darted into the street, a loud crash broke the night. A cacophony of glass splintering echoed behind us. The thing had burst into the diner, and was wreaking havoc. I could almost sense its fury radiating through the air, tugging at something primal within me. We ran without looking back, my heart hammering in my chest while the pavement lashed against my feet. The park came into view, illuminated by the glow of street lamps. My breath hitched with each pounding step, and dread seeped into my veins. What if we weren't fast enough? What if it followed? Just as we entered the park, the laughter returned, soft, playful. It danced around us, colliding with our footsteps. I glanced at the girl, and she looked back at me, her face pale, and for a fleeting second, I thought I saw something in her expression, a recognition of fear that felt shared between us. We made for a huge tree at the center of the park, its wide trunk offering shelter if we needed to hide. I pressed against its rough bark with the girl beside me, breathing heavily as I scanned our surroundings. The sounds of the world felt muted, and I took a moment to catch my breath. Was it gone? Had we escaped? And then I felt it, the heartbeat of dread electrifying the air. It crept upon us, a weighty presence settling in the shadows. I shined the light from my phone across the clearing, chasing away veils of darkness. Trees danced, their shapes flickering, morphing into nightmarish silhouettes. "Do you see anything?" I whispered to the girl, but she shook her head, her eyes scanning the trees. Then I heard it again, a sharp giggle, echoing between the branches. Help, it echoed, only this time it came from a million directions at once. Panic shot through me. "Stay close," I hissed, stepping further into the shadows but keeping my hand firmly on hers. I felt it then, a presence behind us, closing in. I can't! I can't! I screamed into the void of darkness, veins pulsing with adrenaline as I turned to look behind us. It was their shifting shapes melding into a figure, rising taller, eyes glinting in the dark. "Run!" I shouted as the shadows charged toward us, a teeth-baring grin shadowing the figure as it lunged. We took off again, sprinting deeper into the trees. Branches scratched at my arms as we raced through the underbrush. "Which way?" she cried, frantic. "Over the bridge." I pointed to the faint outline shimmering under the dull light from a lamp at the edge of the park. But just as we reached the bridge, that horrifying laughter erupted from behind us. I turned briefly to see it completely unshaped, a whirlwind of darkness. The smell of rot filled the air. My heart dropped at the sight, and I felt my grip around the girl start to slip. "Together!" I yelled, and we launched ourselves onto the wooden beams of the bridge, the slats creaking under our hurried steps. I could feel the creature stalking us, its weight tugging at the atmosphere, as if it were tasting our fear. "Don't look back," I ordered, knowing that every whispered word could be a lie. We reached the middle of the bridge, the calm of the water flowing beneath, contrasting with the chaos we had just escaped. There was no path now but forward. I stopped briefly to catch my breath, and that's when I spotted it under the bridge, the water swirling restlessly below. I turned back to the girl, her eyes wild with terror. "We need to jump. Are you crazy?" she shouted, her voice echoing a question I had been asking myself. "It's the only way. It can't follow us there." Desperation was a strong motivator, and though I didn't know what lay beneath those dark waters, I could feel the tendrils of shadow creeping ever closer. With determination burning in my chest, I grabbed her hand with both of mine. 1, 2, 3, jump! We launched ourselves into the air, the world around us turning upside down. We hit the water, the chills swallowing us as we sank beneath its surface. My body instinctively thrashed, bubbles escaping my mouth as I fought for the surface, pulling the girl with me. As we broke through, gasping for air, I turned to face the bridge. But nothing, darkness and silence replaced what we thought had been pursued. I strained my eyes against the rim of the light above. "Where is it?" I thought frantically, trying to shake my uncertainty. The girl's wide eyes searched the bank, reflecting that same question back at me. And then, just as madness was ready to claim us both, a hand grabbed my arm from below. My mind swirled with panic, but then I recognized it. "Help!" came a familiar voice, a chorus merging with the darkness. It was there, a multitude of children, faces flickering above the water, the darkness drawn to their cries, beckoning them. "No!" I shouted, desperation rising, and before I even realized what I was doing, I fought against the pull, pulling the girl back from the edge, casting another glance into the murky depths. "Hold on," I urged, pulling her close, even as the laughter echoed around us. We had escaped, in body at least. But that presence, the darkness, it lingered. We swam toward the shore, exhaustion wrapping around us like a cloak. As we crawled out, panting and shivering, I felt something stir in the water. From that moment on, while I thought we were safe, I understood something was left unanswered, clawing at the edge of my mind. Would the darkness come back? I turned to the girl, the terror trembling in her voice finally fading. "Are you okay?" She nodded but didn't offer more words. I looked around the park, shadows loomed everywhere, too close, and in the soft glow of dawn beginning to break through the night, I felt uneasy. Would the whispers of those trapped children haunt us? And so we stood, unsure of what to do next, the silence ringing heavy despite being alive. Though we had escaped the chase, questions lingered like shadows, and uncertainty lingered still in that ambiguous twilight.